It feels like it, doesn't it? Good morning, everybody. It is 11:04. Wanted to pop on here. We have just received the 11 o'clock intermediate advisory for, the 11 o'clock full advisory for Hurricane Ian. Want to get right to it. Storm system getting stronger. Maximum sustained winds are at 80 miles an hour. Pressure sitting at 980 millibars. There is its current positioning. Continuing to intensify. And as a matter of fact, the headline from the National Hurricane Center is that Ian forecast to continue rapidly strengthening, currently battering the Cayman Islands, about 100 miles at least off to the west of Grand Cayman, and it is about 240 miles away from the western tip of Cuba. Will continue to certainly impact those areas. So we are certainly going to continue to watch over the next few hours' time the weather getting worse and worse and worse for our friends there in Cuba. Okay, Hurricane Center outlines that the satellite presentation has improved this morning. It is intensifying. So what does the forecast then look like? Well, let's take a look at it, okay? First off, there's its current positioning. Let's just roll through time, and there you go. Tuesday, 8 a.m., a Category 3 storm very near the western tip there of Cuba. Okay, afterward, Category 4 storm approaching the Florida Peninsula, and then we think this is a particularly difficult forecast because it's going to be scraping right along and at some point making landfall around the Big Bend of Florida, and then of course moving on inland. Now, as far as things go, here's a look at kind of the zoomed in cone, and it's not that the cone was necessarily nudged off to the east a bit, but the current forecast essentially hugs the nature coast just north of Tampa, around Land Lakes, okay? And so this is a difficult scenario. I want to, while we're looking at this, I'm going to take all of your questions here, but I want to read just a brief post that James Franklin, who's a former forecaster at the National Hurricane Center, he put out a Twitter post today, said, thinking about something I wrote in 2004, a day and a half before Charlie's landfall, okay? He said this obviously because he thought that it was applicable. Most of the guidance currently shows a landfall from Tampa northward through the Big Bend because Charlie is expected to approach the west coast of Florida as a sharply oblique angle. It is unusually difficult to pinpoint Charlie's landfall, as small errors in the track forecast would correspond to large errors in the location and timing of landfall. He posted that, and I think that it's particularly applicable here because we're in almost the identical scenario, right? It's coming in and it's riding right along the shoreline, but at any point in time it could take a bit of a shift this direction or a bit of a shift this direction, and that would play into the overall impacts from one community to another. So it's a difficult scenario there. It really and truly is. So here we are watching and trying to play it all out, okay? All right. So that said, I see a lot of people asking, what should we expect in Orlando? What should we expect in this city and that city? This is kind of, to me at least, this is the key graphic to key in on, which is the path opportunities. If it were to stay out over the water, we would expect locally more rain. Okay, we would expect a lower end tornado threat, but a tornado threat, and we would expect gusty downpours. But if it tries to go a little more of an easterly track, a little bit more ashore earlier, then certainly we would look more toward the potential of hurricane conditions, tropical storm conditions, higher tornado threat, and likely scenario for flooding. So at this point, these are the elements that we're watching. Essentially, as it scrapes ashore, where does it eventually come ashore? And that is the million-dollar question here. So let's do this. Let's take a look at our futurecast. This is our internal model, okay? It does have the storm system a little faster than actuality, but looking through time, it's not all that far off, but it continues to want to stay on the eastern side of the forecast envelope, the forecast cone there. Our futurecast model has it making landfall around Bradenton, Sun City Center, Sarasota, right? In that area there, around Cedar Key, St. Armand's. So based on that, okay, that gives you an idea that there's still, model inconsistencies here. And so because of that, we have to know that though we are on the right side of the cone, we are still in the cone. Brand new Futurecast data taking us through time. And here's Tuesday, 7 p.m., a tropical rain band moving through. Gusty winds, downpours. You can see, looking ahead to, say, Wednesday morning, these little squally bands are kind of coming on through, and thus, more impactful weather. There's Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday late afternoon / evening, and then kind of 4 a.m. on Thursday. Now, that said, one thing I want to point out, most of the impacts, according to our Futurecast model, are staying out in the western areas. Have to see how all this plays out, right? So it's still up in the air. But I think as long as everybody's on the same page, as long as everybody understands that its actual track is going to be the difference between hurricane conditions, tropical storm conditions, or just kind of a cloudy, wet day. It's a fairly difficult scenario, but just looking at the overall idea, just about all of Central Florida still in that cone, which means that the threats are increasing. Now, in addition to all this, new advisories issued as of the 11 o'clock, okay? Hurricane watches still posted for Hillsborough, Pinellas counties, Sarasota, Manatee, down through, the southwest coast of Florida. But now, just inland, we're now watching Lake, Orange, Seminole, Polk, and Osceola counties under tropical storm watches. What's the difference? What's going on? All right, so all said and done, here's where we're at. Tropical storm watch means tropical storm conditions are possible within 48 hours, okay? Tropical storm conditions are possible within 48 hours. So, again, for what it's worth, the concern is starting to grow, at least that we're going to be getting into tropical storm conditions, okay? So the latest trends, overall, here's where we're at. Tornadoes, gusty winds in these downpours, and heavy, heavy, heavy rain. All right? Big deal. It all depends. It all depends. It all depends. It all depends on its exact landfall point. All right, so let's take some questions, comments, concerns. Let's address anything that you may wonder about. And while we're talking about that, I'm just going to pop up. I know we have a satellite loop. There it is. All right, I'll pop up the satellite loop. All right, questions, comments, concerns. It's ironic, Ian is hitting us tomorrow into the rest of the week. Tomorrow's my birthday. In 1985, Hurricane Gloria hit on my birthday too. Oh, Jennifer, keep the storms away from us, please. Lynn, how are you? But I'm in Port St. Lucie now, and I have no idea who the coverage is. My buddy Glenn down at WPBF, he's your guy. Lacey, if we live in an RV, should we leave Tuesday or Wednesday in Lake County? So the worst of the weather, if we just look at the official forecast from the Hurricane Center, right? If we just take that in, if I can find, there it is. The worst of the weather is moving in Thursday into Friday. But if we back it out and just look at when things are starting, this is a graphic that I think is a pretty good graphic, because it just illustrates when are we going to start to see stuff, squally weather, that sort of thing. Okay, based on everything we know, the idea is in Lake County, Wednesday evening you'll start to see squally weather. Will it be too dangerous to drive? No, you can still drive, but that's when you're going to start to see the weather changing. That's when the weather is going to start to get that tropical stuff moving in. So that would be my kind of time frame for you. Once you get into that period, after that, that's where we're at. Tati's asking about closures. We do not have school closures as of yet. We have not. We have, though, heard that the Hillsborough County, the Tampa area, has started putting into effect certain evacuations. Remember, they are going to be getting a massive storm surge piling up. And I can recall Hurricane Irma Tampa Bay, as the storm was coming in, the wind, it was an easterly wind. It pushed all the water out of Tampa Bay. And then Tampa Bay filled back up. In this case, you've got the potential of kind of a similar scenario where you could pull some of the water out and then on the backside of the hurricane, pile it up in the bay, pile it up in Charlotte Harbor. And that's a concern. So peak storm surge, we're looking at 6 to 8 foot increase in water. And then you've got breaking wave action and all of that, okay? So that's kind of where we're at, okay? All right. You're asking about the different global models. So here we go. This is going to be a look at the two, the European and the GFS, okay? So let's just stop this right here. This is 7 p.m. Tuesday. Both models fairly close in agreement, right? Both models here, 7 a.m. Wednesday, very close in agreement. After that, they do start to adjust just a little bit. 6 p.m., literally riding up the coastline. One model a little closer than another to the beach, but man, what a struggle this is. I will say the GFS is going significantly slower, and that's going to be a forecast struggle point. 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. Friday, the Euro is kind of making landfall, whereas the GFS is staying out to sea, and then the GFS is kind of coming in around the Big Bend. So over the next couple of days, here's what we're doing. We're watching the storm system strengthening, and then tomorrow, the outer bands begin to move into our area. Wednesday, Thursday, the main impacts, okay, are starting to move into our area. All right? Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I can do that. Okay. All right, everybody. Be the sunshine in someone else's day. Updates as is needed.